take a public comment for now since we're the board chair.
Okay.
And if we move it to, but
Yeah.
if Buddy can
And
be
then
president,
there's
somebody
people
else can be.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And you're just sitting there going, oh, wow. Okay.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Okay, we will call the meeting to order. And, she disappeared. We'll go ahead and do a roll call, formal roll call, starting this way, and we'll go down this way, and then hopefully Elizabeth will be back by the time we get there. So we have Brandon Slider.
Here.
Ryan Kaiser.
Elijah Dixon.
Elijah Dixon. We have Lisa Rogers, Mike McBride, Smith, Jason, and Elizabeth Comfort is here. She's just getting a binder update, I'm assuming, or professor. And then online, Richard, do you have any panelists online? I believe we might have one or two.
He said he does not see.
I don't.
Okay. Keep your eyes open in case Gail is able to get online. I believe she was sent a link.
Yep.
So she may pop in at some point here. And then other than that, we will go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I guess we're allowed it. And then
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
okay, so for now, our roll call will be Jim and Gail absent, but potentially with Gail joining us online. And then we will elect Budget Committee officers. So we have 3 positions, President, Vice President, and Secretary. So for everyone here, let's go ahead and start with passing the gavel by nominating a president.
Can you resend Kat the,
I cannot, Richard is the person
Gail.
on the Zoom meeting now, so Richard would have to be the one to resend it now.
okay, we'll see if we can get Richard to send you a text and resend you a link.
Done.
Done. Thank you.
Richard.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, good. Thanks, bye.
Okay, that'll be the last phone call today, I promise. Election of president first. So if anyone has any nominations for president, we can go ahead and do that, and then I can give the gavel to someone else, and then we can do the other 2 positions of vice president and secretary.
I nominate Elizabeth Comfort.
I'll second that.
You can send it.
I have my nomination. Her, okay.
Okay.
Okay, she accepts. Any other nominations on the floor? Any discussion regarding the nominations, the nomination of Elizabeth Comfort? Okay, all in favor of nominating Elizabeth Comfort as president of the Budget Committee? Say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, that is unanimous. Now you get to take
All
over.
right, thank you. Do we have nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Elijah. That's why.
Second.
Any other nominations? Okay, we'll close them. All in favor of Elijah for vice chair?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Elijah. Do we have a nomination for secretary?
Nominate Brandon.
Yeah, I second that.
Perfect. All right, close that. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you, Brandon. All right, turn this over to Clay. What do you have on the agenda?
That's
okay.
down the road. We're on approval of the agenda and meeting dates.
Yeah, so I think that for the budget committee right now, it would just be approval of the rest of the agenda and meeting dates as listed in the budget calendar, and then we move on to the budget message.
Oh.
I move approval of the agenda and the meeting dates as
I'll
listed in the
second it.
budget.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you. Now, Clay.
And for this one, it's gonna be Casey and I working together. So Casey is the budget officer, I'm our new superintendent. But it's nice to meet everyone this evening. So we're gonna walk you through the budget message. We have a slide deck. We have a slide deck that Richard is gonna show that's just gonna take us through the budget message. And so we're gonna use that as a bit of a follow along. But it's exactly what's in your binders. So you can really look at the slides or your binders, whichever you prefer. And with that, if Richard, you would bring that up. Great.
Good evening, Board, Budget Committee members, and public. It's nice to be able to present the 25-26 fiscal year budget for our proposal for that. Proposed budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2025 and ending June 30, 2026 is submitted for your consideration. The budget is balanced and reflects a stable operation of the existing demands, active capital projects occurring in both Newberg and Dundee, and slightly expanded service for district residents. The expanded services are primarily in recognition of continued program growth within the Aquatics and Fitness Center, completion of the Cultural Center's second floor renovations, increased trail stewardship at Bob and Crystal Riley Park, trail expansion associated with the bypass trail, and tennis and pickleball court expansions at Jakewood Park. The district will reallocate resources in its daycare and preschool programs, which will be seen through the closure of the preschool and the preschool programs, while the school-age daycare program expands correspondingly. It is noted that although the closure is proposed, the district will also pursue grant funding to rehabilitate the Bonnie Benedict site in hopes of transforming and modernizing the facility so the district's preschool and pre-K programs can be reinvigorated in the future. There are multiple capital projects currently underway, some of which are expected to reach phased milestones or completion within the fiscal year. Through active capital projects, expanded services will occur at Jakewood Park, Sanders State Park, Rennie Field, and the Bypass Trail. Our district is organized into two major divisions, basic services and special services. Basic services is defined as services available to all participants with no attached fee and includes 6 departments. Some of the services are playgrounds, trails, tennis courts, activity fields, and our internal administrative functions. Special services is defined as services which are available for a fee and includes 11 departments. Although special services works on a cost recovery model, the district has not turned anyone away because they're unable to pay for services. The following personnel were shifted from one department to another or experienced a change in reporting structure. 1 new full-time parks technician. 1 is created with costs offset by reduction in part-time grounds labor resources. The IT technician was shifted from basic services to administration. The daycare specialist was shifted from preschool to daycare programs. Also, our debt payment of the development of the golf course and fitness center renovation is from the general fund. That was from the general fund, was shifted to the system development fund. A comparative expenditure experience for the department and the general fund is summarized as follows.
Let's take a pause there.
Take a pause.
Yep, so one of the things on the next slide, we wanted to highlight what you're gonna see, we're gonna highlight the mission first. So important to remember the mission for the Park District, to connect and enrich our community through parks, recreation, open space, natural resources, and educational opportunities. So that's supposed to be the driving thing that that drives the entire district. And on this slide that Richard's gone to, thank you very much, we just wanted to outline some of the different pieces that you should see in that budget binder and make sure the public's following along with us too. So whether they have a binder or they're using the digital copies that are available online, these are the different pieces that we have in the budget, and we're mostly going to be focusing on the budget message for this presentation. But during the conversation with the Budget Committee, we're happy to go along to whichever sections you want us to go to. Just let us know where you're at, because there are several pieces to what we're talking about tonight. And then on the next slide, wanted to highlight that in particular, the Budget Committee calendar, information, and memo. So that's some of what kind of introduces some of the structure, some of the visions and goals. It also has the resolutions that are recommended for adoption. And so that's where the numbers are associated with appropriations and the proposed budget and all of the funds. And so those are going to be resolutions 2025-02, -03, and -04. So those are what we're working with today. And here is our typical reporting structure, what's also in that section. One of the things I wanted to comment on is the budget is organized slightly differently than how people functionally work throughout the day, but that's really where the resources are allocated to from a financial perspective. And so most of what we talk about tonight will be by the departments that are listed in the budget document, including the budget message, the general fund details, and some of those others. So then on the next slide, we're going to go ahead and get started and kind of going section by section in the budget message. And what I would like Casey and I to do is highlight these different things, whether it's administration, parks, golf course maintenance, acquisition and development. We're going to highlight some of those that are also in the budget message. If you want to, our goal is to get through this from a presentation format, but if that's not working for you and you want us to stop and talk about those things, we're happy to do that. But we just thought we would kind of tee this up to make sure everyone's on the same page for now, if the budget committee's okay with that. So with that, you want to take basic services and I'll jump into special?
Okay, sure. Like I said earlier, there are 6 divisions that are considered basic services. These are to be funded from taxes received. The 6 divisions are administration, parks, golf course maintenance, acquisition and development, transfers, and contingency. So, as you see there, we have a slight increase to administration of $163,066. That's in significant changes include the transfer of the IT technician to admin from basic services, parks, and the completion of 2 annual audits at the cost of approximately $64,000 apiece, or for the 2 of them, and the expected distribution of a mailer to all residents in the district, which represents a new promotional activity, and those are slated to go out in the fall. In the parks, we're showing a net decrease in budgeted, but again, 1 full-time position was added and 1 was taken out, so kind of a wash. And we kind of went through and adjusted some figures based on what was going on in the district. So anyway, for a net decrease of $123,405. Golf course maintenance, showing a decrease of $51,258. Personnel services increased slightly due to staffing changes and the filling of positions that were previously vacant for portions of the year. Last year I spent about, 8 months there, 9 months, I'm not sure. But all those positions have been filled, and we're hoping to have a fully developed staff there. Acquisition and development. Repair and replacement, last year we spent $560,000, or we're anticipated to spend $560,000, and next year we're anticipating $951,000 for a change of $390,000 or so. New development was slated for $2.9 million last year, proposed $3.4 for a net change of $450,000 approximately, and for a total change of an increase of $840,092. And this includes funds for the new equipment needed for operation. Funds for new development are also included. The area that we were to concentrate all the repair and replacement needed for the district. That includes playgrounds, new equipment, asphalt. I can't remember exactly what's in there. New development is also the new Rennie Field Soccer Complex, the trail Phase 1 that connects Newberg and Dundee along the bypass, pickleball courts at Jakewood Park, and Center Estate construction.
I would mention for this one that the capital outlay section is the year by year for the next 5 years associated with both repair and replace and new development. So if you haven't already found that, that's where you'd see those details. Go ahead. Transfer
loan fund. This was a fund that was set up for the pool when we had the bond to pay for the pool. That fund is no longer used. And again, we showed it in this budget because we have shown it previously. I'm pretty sure won't be there next year, but
May not be.
we're going to revise some of the budgeting. These funds are transferred to cover short-term and long-term loans. It was also used to fund shortages when income from revenue, special services, wasn't enough to get the district through the different tax seasons. Like, we get paid taxes in May and November. There was always a shortfall in the summertime. Contingency, last year, we had a contingency of $1.44149 million, and we have a contingency of $4,182,618, and that's a $2.7 million change, and it provides money for unforeseen expenses and/or development things that occur. We're just being transparent with that money. We're not hiding it anywhere. That's what it is.
And part of it, we want to make sure, if you look at the capital outlay schedule over the next 5 years, we want to make sure that we retain a healthy beginning fund balance and also make sure that we don't try and spend all of our money in a single year for repair and replace, because it's, one, an impossible task. Two, we've got too many capital projects coming up over the next several years, both for new development and for repair and replace. And so we're trying to be responsible about how we get that done in a thoughtful way and not try and do it all in a single year and then leave ourselves in a real pickle a couple of years from now. So that's the idea with increasing this for now, and we can recalibrate what an appropriate and kind of policy-driven fund balance should be contingency should be in the future. But for now, we wanted to really make sure we weren't leaving ourselves in a lurch 2, 3, 4 years from now. So that was part of increasing the contingency in this way.
But what did you do to build up to this number?
It's largely, if you think about the large beginning fund balance that we have, the last at least 3 years, if not more, we really haven't been very successful about getting some of those capital projects built that are in new development and acquisition. And that's been unfortunate. That is not something that the district has desired to do. They just haven't gotten built. And so that has left us with a bigger beginning fund balance now, because those funds weren't expended when we expected them to happen. And so if you look back at some of the numbers kind of year over year, you might see some of that. But that's largely where it comes from, is not having expended them elsewhere. So, and we do have some pretty substantial capital projects coming up. So being thoughtful about where we have funds and when we budget them for and what we keep available for coming years, as we know that repair and replace and additional capital projects are coming down the pipe. That's what we felt was important for this.
And these expenditures for repair and replace are, board requested. They're needed in the district. Some of our infrastructure is getting fairly old, and Brian's been doing an excellent job kind of taking care of that. As far as the total for basic services, we are actually budgeting $11,600 less than we did last year. The slight decrease in basic services resources retains the same level of staffing, although it transfers IT technician to administration, adds a park technician, and allocates additional resources to acquisition and development for additional activities in repair and replacement. And that's pretty much the sum of the basic services. Anyone have
Can-
any questions?
Can you elaborate on adding a park technician? From what I read, there was a part-time position and now that's being changed to a full-time, is that?
We reduced the part-time, the hours for the part-time, and we gave Brian a full-time position.
Okay.
Our feeling is that our full-time people, for the most part, do a lot more work than some of the part-time with training and ongoing. And the plan is for succession, right? We're all getting older. All these people are learning things as they go. There's got to be someone there to take over someone's spot.
And the other part of that is we do have a number of properties that'll come online that we expect to have more basic services requirements. If you think about those high requirements, it'll be things like Sandra Estate that are going to come online that aren't built yet, but it'll also be, we've got properties like Bob and Crystal Riley Park, that there is a lot of basic services effort there, and we need to make sure we can keep up with those things. And having a full-time staffer lets us, the argument that was made to me, is that they can work very autonomously. You can get someone that's more skilled or develop the skills in them and that institutional knowledge, but it does draw down some of those part-time hours that we had allocated elsewhere. And so in the personnel schedule and personnel synopsis, those would be the grounds laborers hours that were drawn down specifically. So it's that one lost funds and therefore hours associated with it, and then this technician basically took those.
And we feel like this is enough, being added to the grounds technician department? Because I mean, we're looking at basically 3 new-ish parks. And I know they're already stretched thin, so.
I think it's just enough.
Just enough.
Our basic services supervisor would love to have more.
Yep.
Okay.
But this was definitely a hot point in the conversation for this cycle. And things that we can do it with what we have. We don't want to fall into contingency, and we don't want to fall behind in quality at our parks either. But I really think that having someone that's a full-time staffer that's comes on board does let you send someone out on their own, potentially with other part-time staff, and give direction to folks.
Or work with volunteers.
Or work with volunteers, and really be thoughtful and strategic about the work that they do. So that's why we felt it was a good investment.
Let me ask you a question. This isn't budget specific, but could be. As far as having employees to help Brian, do we use any groups that? So I have a friend who works with some group that works with troubled kids, and they pay for 200 hours of free labor. And then, we can choose, hey, if they turn out to be a good employee, we can choose to keep them on board. Do we work with any groups like that? Do we do any of those kinds of things? Is that something that we would be interested in? And if
I don't
so,
know the answer to that, but-
You want to come in?
I'll hook you
Brian?
up, Brian.
That's a great question, and yes, we have in the past. And there's one group out of McMinnville I currently work with right now that provides job coaching.
Okay.
And, with the employee, and it's awesome. And Trent is actually my second longest tenured employee. He's on his 4th year now. They do an awesome job. Totally receptive and open to any particular other groups that you might have in mind.
Okay.
And I think we're always learning and evolving.
Do we
That
have-
would be an awesome resource.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Brian. Do we have money in the budget in case we decide that we are going to bring on some of these people and we decide, you know what, we could actually use them? Do we have money in the budget to be able to continue that employment if we need?
What I would say is that we regularly have part-time positions that open and close that tend to be seasonal in nature where we're hiring people.
Mm-hmm.
Additionally, we have program contracts as part of the line item that we have available. And if we decided there was something of value that needed to help us get something done, we could bring that to the board if it needed to amend the budget in some way. That to me would potentially be a relatively minor change. But to us, for us to hire someone like that, there really needs to be a vacancy and a need. But
Surely.
we can always make those decisions, and I don't know that that needs to, I don't see a way to kind of speculate about that specific situation in the budget. But those relationships with groups that are bringing in youth or bringing in volunteers, we're happy to partner with those groups. And if they turn into future employees, that's a great outcome.
Okay.
I do want to add, Gail sent a message, she is now online, so, include that.
Question I had, under repair and replacement, you have increased about 70 to 75% the budget for this year. So I'm assuming then if you're only really adding a half a person in parks, then most of that park work is going to be done by outside contractors rather than employees?
I don't repair and replace.
Well, yeah, repair and replacement and acquisition and development of going from 560 to 951, so a large budget increase. I assume that's not going to be done by employees then, because we really aren't adding significant number of employees.
And the employee involvement with different capital or repair and replace or new development, it varies depending on the project. But some of those are fairly specific. Some of it might be largely purchasing the equipment associated with that.
Got it.
And other times we're still using or kind of allocating some of our staffing to manage it. So a playground replacement, we might be pretty involved. And so it can really stretch us thin on personnel to move that along, but we don't do every piece of it. So that's why those are captured differently. And those specifically, what you would see in those would be in that year-by-year capital outlay. And one of the things that, if you look from year to year, the trends that I felt I saw changing our repair and replace were a lot of playgrounds, a lot. And then a handful of restrooms being added. We really want to add permanent restrooms at Ewing Young and, shoot, now I'm blanking on some of the places. I'm getting a brain fog.
Golf course.
The golf course, thank you.
Rennie Field.
These probably haunt Brian's dreams, by the way. But there's, as you look through those, that repair and replace really is an important part of the budget. It's going up, and it's not just this year. And
Right.
so it's something that's it's a challenge for us, and that was also part of why we wanted to increase that contingency, so we continued to have those funds available in the future as we go through. You know, if you picture the repair and replace pipeline as a snake, we're at a pretty, this part of the snake got bulged out a lot more, and it's going to keep bulging for the next couple of years. But we want to get it over control so it's a more sustainable set of projects that we're doing year to year, and try and draw those down through good maintenance.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Wait, that microphone needs to be closer to your mouth a little bit more, sorry.
Try not to get too close to Casey. We've been close enough for the last several weeks. All right, so if that's all the questions for now, we're going to move into special services. Is that okay with everyone on the Budget Committee? Okay.
Yes.
All right, so the special services division is divided into 11 different departments. These are funded from fees and charges that are received. They include aquatics, adult sports, youth sports, classes and special activities, which you'll sometimes hear us call recreation, playgrounds and centers, which involves our school-aged care programs, community center / scout house, which includes our senior center. Julie, if I'm saying any of this incorrectly, you need to let me know. Our community schools, golf course clubhouse, which is different than our golf club's maintenance. So golf course maintenance is the grounds and the facilities, operations is the activities, concessions, and then the preschool, and then there's other. So aquatics, the budgeted amount this year for the department was $1,720,816, and that was an increase of $57,300 over last year. That's primarily for personnel services increases and pay increases, and then the materials side of that was mostly related to utilities changes. So the utilities is actually something that we saw across multiple departments, also being a kind of steady and somewhere between significant and substantial increase. So it went up a noticeable amount in several departments. In adult sports, the proposed budget is for $75,695, and that overall goes down by $731 for that department. So that's a relatively minor changes both in personnel and materials. And so it really has to do with some of the adjustments associated with program expenditures and costs, as well as some of the personnel changes that were very minor. Youth sports, the proposed budget is for $514,734. Total change was $14,824 over the prior year. And again, relatively minor increases. The personnel services are mostly related to salary increases and additional part-time staffing needs. And then the materials and services, most substantial increase was in insurance and utilities. So for classes / special activities, which again, called recreation, kind of when you talk to us about what programs and things that we're running day to day. The total budget for that's proposed is $245,203. And that's a change of $74,285. That's an increase. Personnel service increased based on a reallocation of staff. That's them leaving preschool and increased demand for instructors and support activities. Or sorry, do I have that characterized correctly?
Yeah, so Matt Compton, who's the
Right.
recreation coordinator, he moved out of the child care
Oh,
program.
that's right.
And so now he'll be just in recreation.
Just in
senior
Just in
center,
recreation.
yeah.
That particular staff member is split between a couple of different departments. Yeah. So he was moved out of one and more into this one. And then materials and services was primarily program supply needs. So playgrounds and centers, and like I mentioned before, this includes school-aged care programs, basically daycare for school-aged children. The proposed budget is for $878,852, a change that increases by $69,200 over the prior year. So the personnel services increased based on a transfer of one full-time employee, the daycare specialist, from preschool to this program, and the materials increased based mostly on utility costs. And so the idea, by transferring that staff member in there, we've been struggling with some time with that preschool program, but that's still a valuable staff member. And when we look at the cost recovery numbers with our school-aged daycare, it's doing really well. And we actually think there are more funds out there for us to continue pursuing and continue really growing that program and leaning into it because it's successful and popular. So we didn't want to close one just because it's struggling, but lose some of those good things that we've built into that program, especially if there are going to be opportunities for us to consider reopening the preschool in the future, which we hope to do. But we think that the facility for that preschool, Bonnie Benedict facility, we think the facility is really a key problem associated with what's happening over there. And so closing it down, looking for funds for major renovation, and considering rebooting that and getting that program restarted once we have a facility that people want to use is the right approach. But on this school-aged care program, that's what we see for most of the cost changes associated with that particular department. Community schools / Scout House, that one's where the senior center is housed. Casey had to explain to me where the term Scout House came from because I'm new. But this one, the proposed budget is $265,906. The increase, the change is an increase of $16,500. So personnel services increased slightly. That's primarily inflation and minor changes associated with staffing, very minor. Materials costs mostly increased due to utilities and insurance costs. The next department, community schools, proposed budget is $81,564. The department, that represents a change decreasing cost of $7,870. So those are just relatively minor cost changes as we really try and get close to what we really think we can and need to spend. And so that's what staff were asked to do, and we were happy to see that on this one. Where we can. We can't do that everywhere, but where we can, it's nice to see it. Golf course clubhouse operations. That's a proposed budget of $991,770, which represents a change of $21,384. The personnel costs are mostly within annual salary and fringe cost change, as well as possible step increases that were calculated. Material, but the overall staffing was kept the same. Material and services increased slightly with supplies, so mostly a supplies-related cost, costs go up in general for running programs. Concessions is the next one. Proposed budget is $56,189, which changes by going up $385. So this is an item that's run just in case we run concessions out of our properties, but mostly we run this off of contract and don't typically have to use it. So it's pretty similar to last year for that reason, but we try and build in a little change where we need to. The preschool program, so somewhat mentioned before, proposed budget for this is $7,185, and this is going to change by reducing the cost by $209,599.
Clay,
Yes.
this isn't the time to litigate any of that. However, it hasn't been decided fully. We were still going to be talking more about that from what I understand in our last meeting, that we would be discussing the Bonnie Benedict School further. So what happens if it is decided that this school isn't going to be closed down? And what happens if we need dollars to keep that going?
We would go into contingency, or we would do a supplemental budget.
Okay.
So those things can change. Staff doesn't have any problem with that. We're comfortable with contingency as unforeseen things. What the foreseen outcome is that, for staff, is that the preschool would close, we seek funds and rehabilitate that. If that doesn't happen, staff is not going to get upset about it. It's the board's, we want that conversation to happen. We want the board to think about that. We want the public to give input. We want those conversations to happen. But when we look at the facility and the program and the record low enrollment that we've had, the writing's on the wall. We really need that facility to be rehabilitated in a way that the community wants to use it, is how I feel, and I think how staff feels. So that's there. But if that decision is made and we come to that it needs to change, this is a document for planning for our future, and it can be updated when it's needed.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions, or did I answer that for you?
No, you answered them great. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the last one associated with this is total special services. So proposed budget, $4,889,414, which is a change of an increase of $35,678. So overall, in comparison to the entire budget across that division, they're relatively minor. Special service departments are funded primarily from fees and charges. These increases in materials are primarily related to supplies, utilities, and insurance cost increases. But it's important to note that it only shows a $35,000 increase, but that's with one of our programs going away and decreasing in $209,000. So when we say that there were supplies, utilities, and insurance costs, those were still in there, even though the roll-up number is not that big compared to the whole budget for special services. So those insurance costs and utilities, which we don't have control over, are impacting things. So we're looking at ways to reduce those, but just want folks to be aware that those are something we saw throughout the entire thing.
I will tell you guys, I've sat in a lot of budget meetings. It is shocking to not see these numbers going up. It's shocking to see numbers going down.
Casey was very stern with both Julie and Brian.
I think I heard comments from both Julie and Brian, and they both appreciated the way Clay and I conducted the budget. We asked them questions, we brought them in, we collaborated as a team, and it worked really well. Everyone was happy when they walked out of the room, so.
Mostly.
Thank you, Clay.
Thank you. No, and I would really, before we get too much further, say how much, as someone who's been with the district for less than 2 months at this point, it's hard to believe that we got all the way through this, and so I really applaud Casey's patience and Casey's hard work. Same for the flexibility, the hard work of Julie and Brian and all of their teams, because whether it was Max at the golf course, or whether it was Kellen, or whether it was Wendy, or Matt, or any of the other staff, really pitching in and making sure their departments were being thoughtful about the budget and trying to get it right. I mean, maybe it's just me being a little bit Pollyanna-ish on how great everyone is, but I think everyone really did an admirable job, and so we're trying to encourage folks to participate to get it right and be accurate.
Well, we got a great group of people working here, for sure.
We do.
Yeah.
That's my observation too. So with that, you want to take general fund, and then I'll move on, I'll pick it back up with summary of other funds? Okay, so you get these guys.
I get that.
Yep.
Okay. You got a big book here.
Yeah, well, it's a binder.
Binder. General fund expenditure summary. So personnel services last year were 5,614,000. This is going to be boring. 1,120 versus a proposed 5,688,684, with a total change of 74,564, as we noted somewhere. Materials and services actually went down by 50,483. Capital outlay increased by 840,000. Transfers, there was no transfer. Contingency was the one that went up the most. It went up from 14 million to 18 million.
1.4
or
million.
1.4 million. Oh, yeah, I'm reading. 1.4 million to 4.2 million, for a change of 2,738,469. And the grand total the proposed was 18,459,628, for a total change of 3,602,642. That's general fund expenditures. Personnel service experienced minor increases related to salary increases, fringe cost increases, and changes in part-time staff needs. Increases in materials are primarily related to supplies, utilities, and insurance cost increases. Capital outlay increases in the general fund are related to the number of capital projects expected to mobilize within the fiscal year. General fund revenue from taxes are proposed, or to receive 4,037,780 for an increase of 205,255. Fees and charges were assuming 5.2, almost 5.3 million for a change of 47,000. Beginning balance remains the same from last year. There's no change. Interest and other, last year we budgeted 80,000, and this year we budgeted 3,430,000, for a change of 3,350,000 for the fund. It is anticipated that revenues greater than the preceding fiscal year will be received from grants associated with capital projects under construction during the coming fiscal period. It is projected that minor increases in taxes and fees will result in revenues slightly higher than the preceding fiscal year. So what this shows us is that we're going to receive grants, and those grants are within that number. That's what the difference is in the 14 million versus 18 million.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
So when you look at the capital, the repairs and replacement information, your grant totals are like 4.29 million, and this is 3.4. So is that because some of these grants have already been received in a prior period?
Some have, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And what our thinking on that was, if you went to the revenue synopsis, you would see the grants that are captured there as opposed to capital outlay. Capital outlay is really all the things that we could receive or that seem reasonably possible. So for example, we included some perhaps from Bob and Crystal Riley Park implementation, because we know there's some groups out there that are supportive. But we don't know that we're gonna get that, so we didn't put that in the revenue synopsis because it's somewhat speculative. And so we didn't wanna hang our balancing hat on that. However, those that we had secured, so those that they will give us money when we do the expenditures, those we included in the revenue synopsis. Because we expect that those are gonna be on construction, so we can start asking them to pay us our grant funds.
And they're on a reimbursement basis, all of
Yeah.
them.
It's shocking, no one will give us money before we do the work. It's awful. So, Are there any other questions about the general fund, and either those revenues or the expenditures?
I had a question about personnel services. Approximately of the, I would call them incumbent employees who were here last year, and what percent of pay increases overall did employees get?
Between 3% and 5%.
Okay. And on fringe benefits, with the cost of health insurance and everything skyrocketing, how are you guys able to keep a lid on that and not have this number go up a lot more?
Careful budgeting. Yeah, I think medical, our benefit package is about 11% this year.
Yeah, and I think it has gone up some. I mean, that's what we see for some of these
And
cost
it's
increases.
different for individuals versus, couples versus families, and we don't discriminate. We don't really have, we can't say we're gonna hire this person because he's single, just because the other one's married, it's whatever it is. So we usually try and budget high, but our full-time staff, like I said, is pretty much full at this point, so we know what the number should be.
And I assume then, since we took almost 200,000 out of preschool, that change would have been much bigger if we would have kept that in there.
That is correct.
Okay.
Quick question about the contingency. So, for instance, if you were to look at the repair and replacement, and like Tom Gale Park is not on here, for instance, because it's in pretty good condition. But if something were to happen like at the Rotary Park with vandalism, or at Ewing Young where the slide cracks, is that the sort of thing where you would dip into the contingency?
That could be.
It could be, it depends on the expense. These playgrounds used to be relatively inexpensive. Well, I should say 60,000 to replace.
Sorry, Mike.
Now they're, 180,000, and that's all within 5 years. So they're, the sooner we get these replaced, the better. And we're running into, like you said, vandalism. They tear out a slide. They don't make that slide anymore. So you end up putting something in just to make sure that there's a slide in there, and know that you're gonna replace maybe the whole structure eventually.
But those sorts of things could be, I mean, that would certainly qualify as unforeseen if something kind of catastrophic happens to a piece of equipment. Then we have contingency for that. But at the same time, we do have the capital plan in place so that we can consider how to move those forward. But it's good for planning for the future. We're trying to keep an eye on the assets and the inventory and how they're aging. So, yeah. Thank you. All right, so we're going to move into summary of other funds. So, reserve fund for major equipment and maintenance, or equipment and major maintenance, that is proposed at 0, which is the same as prior year. System development fund, proposed revenues and expenditures are both $4,660,581. That is a slight decrease from the budgeted year of the prior year of $69,738. And so this was basically taking a look at what we thought was reasonably foreseeable and trying to be conservative with it so we don't budget for money that we don't get. But we do think this will go down slightly based on development trends and being conservative. So this is also talked a little bit further in the capital outlay portion of the budget, including the capital synopsis.
The loan payments
Oh, I was gonna say Clay.
for the golf course get paid out of there.
That's true. So the loan payments for the golf course.
and the fitness center.
Clay, back on the SDC funds, there was about $1 million change from the original notebook to today's. What was that?
So I would say that was, so that had been, so we ended up taking that. So if anyone looked at the originally published documents, we actually had unallocated fund balances in both the general fund and the system development fund. And I would say that your new superintendent erroneously thought that would be a great policy discussion about what to do with that, because the way that some of those had been captured in the past, I wasn't really comfortable with, but I was convinced that was not the right way to do this. And so what we did was that unallocated fund balance associated with system development fund, we basically used that to pay for more of the new projects and acquisition in the capital projects, specifically Sander Estate. And so that made it so that it came less out of the general fund. And so then We rebalanced those capital projects, rolled that forward into the other places that were affected, and included rebalancing then the general fund, including the additional contingency that came into that. So you would see that system development is paying for more, contingency ended up getting a little more.
Thank you.
Hopefully that wasn't too circuitous, but that was more or less how it worked. There was a serious ripple effect on that particular decision.
So just a clarifying, if you have a balance left over from the prior year on those system development, it goes into contingency then?
No. It still stays in the beginning fund balance of that fund.
Okay.
But if you were to look at the, those funds are separate. So they have their own expenditures, they have their own beginning fund balances for whatever's not expended in that given year, and they have their own revenues that go into them. So what we showed was an unallocated fund balance of just over $1 million for SDCs. And when we went to make it so that everything balanced the way that it's supposed to, revenues and expenditures, we did so by making it so the SDC fund paid for more of the Sander Estate project and the general fund paid for less of it. But then we still had to go into the general fund and balance that. If you look at the memo that was submitted to the Budget Committee yesterday, there's a reason the list is quite so long on the things that changed. And so those were interrelated to each other, and so that's some of what we saw there.
Thank you.
And so the grand total of the proposed budget, I don't think I've skipped any, did I skip things? I did skip things, didn't I? Sorry. So the loan service fund is proposed at $36,300, which is a change of $1,000. And so this is related to both funds used to pay both short and long-term loans. So we've got 4 outstanding loans presently, and this is the fund used to pay for the loan service on those items. We have 2? So did we miswrite that one?
Yeah,
So we have 2?
Yeah.
2.
Oh, because
The
these are,
golf course,
Say,
you
I
have
have
fitness area. Golf course will be done this year.
this is what, sorry, this is what happens when you have the new guy speaking. So let's see. Which are the highlights that we feel are best to share with these guys?
Construction and road improvements along Fernwood Road are paid off. Construction of the first 9 holes at the golf course were paid off in last year, August of '24. Construction of the second 9 holes at the golf course, which was refinanced in 2018, that loan ends during this fiscal year coming up. So then we're down to 1 loan. Purchase of the riverfront property, that's paid off. And the only thing that would be left is the fitness center, and that's in 2042, I believe, somewhere in there. So the construction and road improvement to Fernwood and the purchase of the property for the campground are paid, and the front 9 of the golf course, the first 9. And then these loan payments were moved to the SDC fund for payment. Does that make sense?
All right, so for the debt service fund, the proposed budget is $1,410,975, which is a change of increasing at $15,500. This fund is mandated by budget law. This is a tax paid for the $19.9 million bond measure that was passed. And the anticipated collection rate that was used to calculate this is 95.8%. So then moving on to the capital project fund, the revenues and expenditures are both expected to be 0. So this is something that's not been used recently, but was also associated, it was a fund that was included with the money received from that same $19.9 million bond measure. So the district borrowed $5.9 million to finish the aquatic and fitness center, and the district transferred all the monies to the SDC fund. So the grand summary of all funds for this proposed budget is expenditures, $24,567,484 for a change that results in an increase of $3,519,384, or $519,384. So one of the things that I would want to point out on this is it does account for those grants that we received and that are incorporated into this that reflect that $3,350,000 grant funds that are expected to both for us to expend and be reimbursed for in this fiscal year. So that's a substantial part of that change. And if the committee has questions, we'd be happy to answer them. And so this, go ahead.
Nope, go ahead.
Okay. So this is the end of our presentation. The only slide I have left is a recommendation about what we would ask you all to do, which is to make a motion to approve the proposed fiscal year 25-26 budget for the district and recommend the Board of Directors adopt resolutions 2025-02, 2025-03, and 2025-04. Each of those are in your budget binders in that first kind of committee information section. And staff are happy to answer any questions if you want to go into different areas of the budget to discuss further. This is how we would expect that time going. So you can answer questions, you can talk amongst yourselves. We're available to you.
So under your repair and placement information, in previous budgets, there was money set aside for the bridge at Ewing. And I know we're still waiting till we get some kind of something from the county. But in these future budgets, I don't see it anywhere. I see you got a bathroom and I see you got a playground, but I don't see the bridge anywhere. And we have that, what is it, 13 acres across the creek that 11 acres. I mean, that we really need to have access to
Yep.
at some point.
You are correct. That seems like an oversight.
Is that Ewing on that you're
Yeah.
talking about?
Yeah.
Well, you gotta work on the county then.
Not me.
I think,
We are having discussions. That is something we need to put in there.
I would just ask that in future budgets that, like, you know, that we can modify
carry
this. I mean, I
things
know
forward.
there's no need to change it at this point, but I think it's really important that that bridge end up happening for the
and
sake of the
we
district.
would like to see that happen too. So we're
Yeah.
happy to take note of that.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes.
On the page 9 where it shows under strategic goals, it has objectives. Are these long-term objectives or are these things that you were hoping to get done on any specific timeline?
Okay,
For
so do you want to
instance,
answer
the
this?
golf
They're
course,
just
clubhouse.
long-term objectives.
Got it.
Each board comes together and goes over what are typical, what we've been working for a long time. The golf course, the campground, the clubhouse, all those are long-term because the funding's not available and the revenue's not available to sustain them. So we have to look for different ways to, when opportunities come up, grants, such as grants, or even private people have volunteered and donated in kind for services to build parks. So we look for opportunities, but we do keep a list of things that we're constantly working towards.
So,
Okay, I'd like to call to order here. Are there any questions specifically on the budget message that was heard? We will have time for discussion after public comment, but are there any specific questions? What was presented? Okay, right now I'd like to, I will want to take a 2-minute break after public comment. I have something for Kat that I need to question on the resolution, but we do have 2 folks wanting to speak. One of them, I'm going to ask to come up to write your name in the public comment form, while Laura Adams, if you'd like to come up, go up there, and you have 3 minutes. Time 3 minutes, once she starts speaking. Oh, they do? Okay.
Hi, I'm Laura Adams. I'm a resident of Newberg, and I've been so for the last, now I have to do math, but 11 or 12 years. I have 2 children. Me and my family use CPRD resources a lot. I've used the gym before the renovations, after the renovations. We go to the parks. It is something we truly enjoy as a family. Excuse me. But the removal of the preschool from the budget, even though it's a proposed budget, has shown the community that there is not a drive to maintain a preschool in the area. And this is the only preschool with availability, would have availability in town that I would feel comfortable sending my children to. I believe that school should be for school and not religion. So I'm looking for a secular school. And this was my only option. There is now one position open for next year. There's 5 children in the preschool. Who's gonna get that position open at Good Life that is currently being housed at the cultural center, where we have an empty room that is not being used? If we close this preschool now, even if we have the intention of reopening, that is not likely to happen. Reopening programs like a preschool costs a significant outlay, let alone having to get grants to repair the building or move it somewhere else. By getting rid of the teachers, getting rid of the supplies, we hamstring ourselves from being able to reopen this preschool. The parents that I've talked to in the area who have not expressed interest in getting on a wait list for next year is because if they sign up for that, if they say, okay, I'm gonna go to Bonnie Benedict, you're missing an opportunity to send your child to preschool at all next year. We have already missed most of the enrollment windows. You can't get into preschools anymore. You can't get into preschools within 20 minutes of here that are secular. And I don't have time in my life, in my parents' life, in my in-laws' life, who take care of my children while I'm working, to drive 40 minutes twice a day to drop my kids off and pick them up at preschool. So please, please add the preschool back into the proposed budget. Do not show the community that this is not something that we really want to keep. This is something that's really important to Newberg as a whole. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura Adams.
Thank you.
Next, we have Nick Conan. You have 3 minutes.
Hi there, Nick Conan, live in Newberg. Speaking as a citizen, so referring to, the objective section of the budget, I realize these are long-term objectives stated by Casey, and they're sort of opportunistic objectives. But I was disappointed to see the proportion of money allocated to specifically the golf course versus things like fields and field improvement. I've been coming to board meetings for a few years now, and one thing that's consistent is Julie announcing just how full our youth sports programs are, and then people from all different organizations talking about how there aren't enough fields and fields in good enough condition to practice year-round. So, like I said, I realize that these objectives are longer term, but I believe the decisions the committee makes tonight in the near term affect the long-term goals. So I would propose or just consider putting more thought into field improvement and more fields for our youth programs, especially in proportion to some of the special services like the golf course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Be right back.
Clay, can I ask you a question? This is a everybody question, just, you know.
Did say she needed a 2-minute break.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Sorry, so we're on a 2-minute break and we'll be.
We're on a 2-minute break.
Okay, well, thank you for your patience on that break. Usually when we come to this point, we ask, how do we want to go through the budget? Is my mic on?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Do we want to have an open forum of questions for those that have been around before? Do we want to go systematically through in number 8 by fund and by department? We've kind of left it over to the committee, kind of like, how do you want to pursue? Mike?
So I just have a question on the idea of taking the preschool out of the budget. Now, if it's a situation where it's in disrepair and needs to be fixed up, then I think it ought to be maybe put on a little bit more of an important fast track and get somebody in there to take a look of what needs to be done to fix it up. Because from the city's point of view, we had a study that was done a couple years ago, and there's a big need for daycare in this community. And so it's always been a moneymaker in the past, and if it's not a moneymaker now because it's in disrepair, well, then you just need to fix it up. And I kind of think that it should be left into the budget, and then there's no reason why you couldn't get somebody in the next 90 days or 4 months to give you guys a bid of, I mean, you know more than what I know about what needs to be done there. But you ought to be able to get a few contractors to come in and give you an idea. So if there's a need, then you need to fill the need. And I would say, let's do that and not just take it completely out of the budget.
I'm actually in agreement with Mike. As a matter of fact, I'd go one step further. I think that it should be left in the budget, and if we decide that we're not going to do this, then we'll figure out where to allocate those dollars. But we have facilities in which we could continue doing this daycare, and the reason why attendance is so low is because the building is so dilapidated. That's the truth. However, I believe that it's imperative that CPRD continues to provide this essential service to the community. And we have open spaces, whether it be the home that is by Sanders Estate, whether it be the cultural building, which we own and has open space, and I think we should be using that space. There are spaces to continue this, and I think that we should consider doing that. Now, this isn't the place to debate that. I'm just making that comment. On the other hand, the other thing I wanted to bring up is if we were to find let's just say a piece of property for $1 million, an 80-acre piece of property for $1 million in which we could have ball fields, there is a mechanism in which we could purchase a piece of property, isn't there? With this existing budget.
So I would say that we would have to evaluate it,
Mm-hmm.
just in general. But we do have a beginning fund balance and a contingency fund that seem healthy to be able to sustain some expenditures. Alternatively, we have generally more things on our capital outlay over the next 5 years than we have cash for. So that's something just to be aware of. And when you add repair and replace, which is a constantly evolving challenge to the new projects that we have on there, at some point, something's got to give, and to continue purchasing things, we don't always have funds for those. So we can if it's prioritized, but that's where a prioritization effort, I think, comes into play. But if we felt that it was a higher priority, and we got to a point where we could no longer sustain something with contingency, then that would have to come out of what else we have in capital outlay, and something would have to get removed.
Sure.
So without having something concrete and being able to look at it more closely, I would say generally contingency is for that sort of thing, and we'd have to see how comfortable we are coming down on something like contingency, knowing that we have things coming down the road more than a year out. So it's possible.
Yeah, I'd like to add on that. Contingency is for one-time use, not an ongoing expense.
Yeah.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I say dealer's choice. How would you like to proceed?
I vote for not going piece by piece through everything. I think staff did a really good presentation. I think people will have questions at any different kind of portion that they're specifically passionate about or have ideas on, and I think we just open it up for
Okay.
discussion. If it gets too out of hand, you just start swinging that
Okay.
gavel and
All right, well, very good. Lisa, you had some questions. You want to kick us off? We'll just go round robin and,
Actually, no, I've been asking them as I've
So
been
you're
going.
good?
So
You're
I'm
all
pretty good.
done?
I would like to just comment on what Mike said. I think for me, it's the preschool is a program and a facility that we already own. And not just that particular facility, but whatever facilities that we have in the district, I feel like we have a responsibility to maintain them in a way that can be used. We have, over the last 7 years that I've been on this board, spent a lot of money improving the playgrounds for the school district. And had we put that money into Bonnie Benedict, we might be in a different place today than we have been. I don't know operationally how this stuff works, and I'm not saying that we don't need to reevaluate what that looks like. All I'm saying is that we had a program for a need that is dire, that's been around for almost 60 years, and we let it die. We didn't put anything into those buildings, and I think that we have to be really careful about how much more we're pulling into the district if we can't take care of what we have. Now, maybe if there hadn't been a need for the preschool anymore, I'd say, yeah, sure, we don't need to go ahead and continue to do that, but the need is dire. And it's a facility we own. And to me, I think we have a responsibility to do something about that, whether it's this year or next. People need it now. I don't know, I do. We have the Armory, we have other places, yeah.
So I just wanted to add that, we,
Julie, Mike.
oh, you know, I gave a presentation, I think at the last board meeting, with some, I would say facts, some information about the preschool and pre-K program. And this is something that I've been looking at for quite a while. The before and after school childcare program used the school age program at the elementary schools, the 6 elementary schools. The preschool and the pre-K budget was always mixed in with that budget. So when I took over as a special services supervisor, I really wanted to see what those numbers look like. And that's when we really, looked at those and said, wow, there's a big, there's a lot of disparity there. And so since the presentation, I've seen some things on social media, but I have not received, I received one email that said that they would like to go on the wait list in 2026 for the Threes program. And then I received an email from Laura's husband, Nathan, and I talked to one other gal that used to work for us that would be interested in the fall of enrolling her child, but other than that, I haven't heard from anyone. And so I don't know if that's because people think that we're going to close it, but I just, we haven't had great enrollment. So I wanted to mention that. I also wanted to say that Newberg School District, they're offering a free preschool program. 4 to 5 of our employees are using that. It's a full day program. It's a full day program. They get free breakfast, they get free lunch, and they get free supplies. And we're having a hard time competing with that. And like I said, even our own employees are using that versus our own Bonnie Benedict and our own pre-K program. So those are just a couple of things that I wanted to mention. You know, I said at the last board meeting, this is a very difficult decision to make. A lot of thought went into it. It's been 3 years of working with the preschool and pre-K specialist, Deanna Rice, and we tried to throw a lot of things at it and try to do, you know, save money and do things a different way. We tried to get out and promote the program, and Laura and I think Nathan were saying that we did not do a good job of that. But we've been attending fairs, we've been getting our information out to the schools, and we just have not seen the response. So, any questions about that?
Well, do you think that that's a result of the facility, though? Is it not that the kids are, that there's not a need for daycare, but that the facility has not been kept up in the way that we should have kept it up? Do you think it would make a
Maybe.
difference if we fixed it up? Do you think you would see more enrollment?
I really don't.
What if we moved it to another location? I mean, it sounds like.
It's
we
not
have-
too far, right?
Yeah, it sounds like we have other facilities in the district that could do that, we could move it to.
I think we've looked at that. I don't think we've identified a location for that. So the Cultural Center, they currently have a preschool there, and that seems to be actually well attended. But I will tell you that we pay, so for instance, in our 3s class at Bonnie Benedict, we have 5 kids and only 2 are paying. So we were making about $300 a month on that 3s class. And our expenses, our personnel expense is a lot more than that.
Could we do an experiment and this year move to a different facility? See if the community acknowledges that and signs up, and more people sign up for it.
I'd like to add, what I'm hearing is that there's not the demand for this particular preschool. There are other preschools in existence that are flourishing with more services. And even with the announcement, I saw it on social media, I think there were 2 comments. You know, and so there is not the call for this particular preschool at this time. And I think that we need to be operating fiscally sound and provide services that are in demand. And I'm not hearing from what Julie has done her, you know, excellent research. They've gone out and tried to gain, you know, more students, but it can't be a facility stopping that if there's not a call for it. And so I think we need to be fiscally sound in how we're utilizing our funds.
My understanding is that we've had parents come in to view the facility and never come back. And that is because of the facility itself. It's not the employees, it's the facility. I really, you know, and I tell you what, I think about the dollars that we spend or we lose because we either have parents that don't pay because they cannot afford to pay, or we're simply don't have enough kids there because of the facility itself. I don't think that we should give up on this idea of something that we've been doing for the last 55 or 60 years. And when we talk about losing 120,000 or less on this particular program, I sit there and I look at some of these projects that we're going to be investing in. $79 million on trails. Are you kidding me? $79 million. That's what's in this budget, okay? Think about the millions of dollars that we've spent on the cultural center, or the hundreds of thousands we spend every year maintaining it, okay? $120,000 is a big chunk of money, but it's nothing compared to what we're going to spend on other things. And before we go anywhere else, this young lady right here wanted to say something, and I interrupted her. So if you could go up to that thing.
I should have brought a pad of paper. I'm having too many thoughts. But so as far as I've been talking to families, and people are unaware that CPRD has a preschool program. and that there's availability. They're also under the impression that it is the most expensive preschool program in the community, when in fact it is one of the least expensive. And part of the problem with being one of the least expensive is the community CPRD are not charging enough for what we're providing. We're charging half of what other preschools are providing. Oh my goodness, and then I just had another thought and escaped. Yeah, nope, it escaped.
Okay.
You were saying something and then it just ran out the window.
Oh, I'm sorry.
When you spoke just a minute ago, Elizabeth.
She's talking about the need. There
The
wasn't a need.
Yeah, and like I said, the preschool at the Cultural Center is the only other secular preschool in Newberg and Dundee. They have one spot for the fall that now I have to decide tonight to enroll my daughter there. I mean, that's the only one available. So I have to decide tonight if I hold out for Bonnie Benedict. That means a lot to my family. Or do I give up?
Thank you, Laura.
Yep.
I just want to make one more comment that there is a need because Northwest Christian Church, George Fox, and ADEC are going in together, and they're going to be building a large facility, and it's going to be out on Villa Road out there, and it's going to be like 2 stories, I think.
200 students.
Yeah, and so it's huge. The only reason they're doing that is because there is a need for daycare in this area, and so they're trying to fill that need because they've got workers that are having troubles finding a place for their kids to go. So if they're all getting together and doing that, then there is a need. So and if the cultural center, I did not know, has a preschool daycare there, why are you allowing, board, to that happen? It's in direct competition on your property that you own.
Well, I'd like to say.
You shouldn't be doing that.
Right. We have a contract with the Cultural Center. They do all operations. That is the contract. They are an independent 501c3.
I understand that.
And you have a contract. It's a 50-year contract that's in place. But Mike.
But they don't want, you don't want them to be all of a sudden doing programs and stuff that you guys are doing.
But the thing is the community came to them saying that there's not, it doesn't, the facilities, nobody wants to go there.
Okay.
And we're not putting money into it. So, blaming somebody else is not the answer here. The answer is that we haven't been keeping up with what we have.
So again, I think there's still a need. Otherwise, George Fox, ADEC, and Northwest Christian Church wouldn't be doing it. So again, I think you keep it in the budget, your contingency is way more than what we ever used to have. I think it's good to have that, but you could certainly pull $150,000 or $200,000 off the contingency, put it back in the budget, and set it up someplace else until you can get that building refurbished, and then get the word out. And I don't know how many people really look at stuff online. I think you ought to go back to brochures myself, but, hand them out to the schools and get them out there to people so that they've got it in front of them, they can look at it instead of just thinking about it and going on. Anyway, that's all I'll say. We're going to take too much time on this.
So I think that we need to make a motion here. I personally, I'd like to see the dollars kept in and then in the budget, and then the board is going to have to decide, are we going to move this facility? Are we going to close it down? I want to leave it in the budget, regardless what we decide to do.
So we have a motion on the table to keep it in the budget.
To keep it in the budget.
Do you have a dollar amount that you want to assign to that?
Just exact, Go ahead,
Regarding
Clay.
the dollar amount, if your budget committee chooses to keep this item in the budget, I would suggest keeping it at the same as the prior fiscal year, plus an additional $60,000 in materials in case we have to lease a space that we do not currently own to conduct the program.
Okay.
So that would give us potentially some additional wiggle room if any of our other spaces don't appear to accommodate. So if that seems reasonable, that would be my recommendation.
What
to
was
budget.
the amount that we had in there last time? 126,000?
It
Or
would
was
be.
Not
216.
216? So
216,000.
276? All right, so I'm making a motion that we put $276,000 in the budget for daycare. For our, what do we call them, our threes?
Preschool.
Just preschool.
Preschool and pre-K are the two programs.
Okay.
It's the preschool is the department in the budget.
So for discussion, we need to have a second, and then we
Second.
go, who was that?
Second.
Mike? All right, so we have a motion on the table for $276,000 to fund a preschool. I just want to note that I would not say it's guaranteed that it's going to be operational. It's just dollars allotted in the budget. This does not ensure enrollment. This just says that we're going to have a budget, and then the operations will have to be determined via the programming of I need to go to, any discussion from the budget committee?
Yeah, and then the board may decide that they don't want to keep it open. They may decide that. So, just to let everybody know. I think it's valuable to keep it open.
Point of clarification, like, on programming, does the board have the authority to make that decision?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, no, let,
So it's supposed to be direction on what staff can do from the superintendent.
Okay.
But in my mind, where boards, city councils, and those get involved and to what extent varies substantially depending on the board. So I have heard far more coming to this agency that something is a staff decision than I have heard in some other organizations that I've worked in. But if the board at a policy level tells us that preschool is part of our portfolio, I would argue that that stops being a staff decision. It's up to the staff to figure out how to implement that direction.
thank
So
you.
for us to stop cold and say, no, board, you don't have that ability to tell us what to do, that's not true.
Okay.
Well, I think staff has properly identified the fact that there's a lot of maintenance required for the building, and that it's not really feasible to continue the preschool there. So the other point is this isn't a basic service, this is a special service. It's supposed to be self-funding to the extent possible, and I think that's why staff has made the decision they made. And my opinion would be to defer to that decision. I think it was prudent, it was fiscally wise. I don't think it's the end of anything in terms of how we approach preschool going forward. I think we still have every option available to us. There are a lot of grants right now in Oregon, the workforce grants, and staff has already been advised to start looking into those things. And that was a result of the last board meeting. So my recommendation would be to vote no on this motion, to stick with the budget as provided by the staff. And I think the board, I can only speak for myself, but from the last board meeting, the board did note that this is something we want to continue to explore. We want to explore funding, we want to explore locations, and a way to make this work, but in a way that's fiscally responsible going forward.
I'd like to note that this budget presented is staff's perspective on good fiscal operations with the funds received. And I appreciate the point that this is in service needs, right? And it is supposed to be self-sufficient. And so so who's subsidizing that then? So and I appreciate the staff is making good operational recommendations to this budget committee for the sustainability of the funds, right? There's a lot of special districts that are out over their skis, and we're trying to stay in line. So I hesitate to, to do something that we know today is not fiscally sustainable.
Elizabeth, and I'd like to add too, that this is something that we've been studying for 3 years. This isn't a hasty decision. This is something that we really identified when we split those budgets out 3 years ago. And I think you are correct, special services, we our goal is to have 100% cost recovery. And in the last 3 years, the amount, the expenses have just increased and increased, and the revenue has decreased. It's not, if it was going the other direction, if we were getting close, then I would say, let's take another swing at it, I feel like we've thrown everything at this, and the numbers are getting larger and larger and larger. Enrollment is getting lower, and our expenses are getting higher.
How many children have to be enrolled in order to cover the costs?
We'd like to have about 15.
15?
Yeah, 15 to 20. And in our pre-K program, we would like to have about 25 to 30, and we have 4 in our pre-K program right now.
I'm kind of of the opinion that if we turn this off here at the budget committee, at this level, there will be no further conversation in the community in the park and rec. So in my opinion, I'd like to see this remain in the budget so that there can be further discussion. Clearly, the community is asking for it. And I think that voice needs to be heard and represented and reflected in the budget. Now, as we have that conversation, if we cannot acquire 15 kids for this program over the course of the next 9 months or whatever, then I think it's fair to turn it off. But I think there needs to be given an opportunity. So I would recommend we vote yes for this.
Yeah, Elijah, my only concern about that, sorry, is if we don't have the numbers by the fall, what do those 3-4 parents do?
It's only in the budget. Well,
You know what I'm saying?
that's a very good observation.
We don't want to lead expectations to where we can't materialize. And I think we do, and I want to also make a point, the reason we have a contingency the size we do is because we're actually recognizing the prior year's ending fund balance in previous budgets. We just had a fixed number every year for contingency that was not reflective of actual prior year's ending fund balance. So just note, it's not that this is all of a sudden really exploded in our dollars. It's now we're recognizing the carryover from the prior year.
I don't know, $175,000 or whatever it is.
76, yeah.
I just don't see that being a lot of money, but.
But who's gonna-
Which
yeah.
could be covered by the contingency fund if we had to.
But again, if it's not fiscally sustainable, whose dollars are going to pay for that? Because those contingencies did come from another service.
I think the board needs to sort that out in the board meeting.
I mean, fix it up, if
I could-
that's the problem.
Do you mind if I add another point? So this is just numbers for the discussion purposes. So staff have talked about in the past that our targets for special services are cost recovery. They do that to a lesser or greater degree depending on participation, enrollments, and those sorts of things. But we also try and keep those prices moderate so that people can participate. So we don't want to overcharge people. We want to charge reasonable, get cost recovery, and sometimes enrollment's not spot on and you don't get there.
But what I heard is
Cost-
we're undercharging.
But cost recovery now, with what we have, is less than 25%. So we're recovering about a quarter of what it costs. Now, the other thing that I would say that I've heard from the board, and that some of the budget committee appointees haven't been there, is there are lots of things that we pay for the full pop. That's the entire basic services division, all of the parks, playgrounds, all those sorts of things. So that is a point that has been made. And so it becomes a policy discussion about use of fiscal resources. And so that's where I think the board's understanding, and it's one of the things that I'm going to request that the board, when we have our new board members roll on in the next fiscal year, that we have a discussion, because I think it'd be good for all the board members to get together to remind everyone what our existing goals and priorities are, but also have a discussion about fiscal policy because it's come up in this recent conversation about where we tend to be on cost recovery so that we know the reality of that on things that are 0% cost recovery, those things that are 100% cost recovery. The pool, for example, the aquatic center is at about 95% cost recovery. That is impressive. The golf course is just the programs is 199% cost recovery. But if you include both the maintenance of the golf course and the programs, it's at 87% cost recovery. That's impressive too. So I think that there's some good things happening in the district, but not everything's going to work that way if we want to have some of these things. So it does become a policy and portfolio discussion with the board and the budget committee. So I appreciate that the budget committee is having this discussion. It does not offend staff that you guys are having it. So with that, I would say keep on discussing. I just wanted to add that to the mix.
I would like to go back and simply reiterate, say my motion. So I would like to know how everybody would like to vote.
He's calling for the question, in other words.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'd like to take a poll. Who does that? Clay or Kat? On do we?
You're still discussing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, are we still discussing? I'm
Yeah, I think, sorry to butt in, but we do have two over here and then Gail online as well. If she's able to comment, I think everyone should have the chance to comment before we vote.
I did have a couple of thoughts because it's certainly a tough one. Are you beholden to the taxpayer more than you are to the services that you provide? As it, is the preschool going to be the first thing that you want to cut when it comes to cutting? So my question, I think, is this more appropriate for the board of directors to discuss over the budget committee to make that call? And as the budget committee, what kind of decision should we make to set that up for you guys? Is it better, like for instance, for staff, is it better to have it in the budget and then have the board make that final decision? Or is it better to have it as is and they can come back with a supplemental budget?
From a staff perspective, it does keep it open where it's in the budget and we can readily move forward if that's the decision of the board. And like I said, it does not offend staff that this would be included and this amendment be made to the proposed budget. That's acceptable. And it would keep the option open more easily rather than us having to be reactionary and modify the budget should the board decide to keep the program open and active.
So it really just is providing continued opportunity
Continued
for a
opportunity
discussion.
for the dialogue and decision to occur.
And then if we went the other way where we would come back and amend it, but let's say we don't leave it where there's nothing in it, and then the board decides that they want to continue with the program, we'd all have to come back together and do an amended budget, or how does that work?
Depending on the quantity and the percentage of the budget that gets changed, there are different actions we have to take. I don't remember what those are off the top of my head. We may have a budget committee member that happens to know that stuff. But if we had to do a supplemental budget to modify it, then we would just do that. I don't think that needs to be an excessive thing or a barrier to making decisions. It's just a different approach. And so it's something that staff could do. So it'd be either putting it in the budget so that it's available to continue and that discussion happens, or having it not be in the budget, and if the board decides that it's going to continue operating, that we really want this preschool to continue operating, then we do a supplemental budget to modify it. It doesn't need to be a big deal one way or another. So you all can move forward as you choose to, and staff will do what you want us to do.
Thank you.
Yeah, my comment is I thank the staff for diligently and prudently looking at this. And if I look back, it's been, I can't tell when the last time it actually got close to paying for itself. And with the reduced enrollment, I don't see any time in the near future where it will. Now, maybe a different business model is what it's going to take. A better facility, different rates, different promotion, whatever. It may be a different model that works. but the way it's currently going, I don't see a fiscally responsible approach of putting it back in the budget. I mean, it's just not fiscally responsible to keep throwing money at it. And I guess if we did, then I could see the publics start saying, well, then why don't you start giving me youth sports or something? I mean, why this one and not other areas of special services? I hear more parents clamoring about the high cost of kids participating in youth sports than they do about preschool and daycare. Granted, the ones who partake, it's you know, a lifeline. But if we're talking about the overall budget and the overall citizenship, there's a lot of areas that I think are much more impactful on families in this community than this.
We do take care of our kids. If they don't have any money, they do get to play for free. No kid is ever turned away. Just so that we're clear.
Do we have Gail on the line?
Yeah, Richard, is Gail able to speak if she wishes?
Yes.
Gail, would you like to speak on this topic?
No audio from her.
Okay.
She unmuted though.
Well, shall we have a vote here?
We have a call for the vote. So do a roll call with voting? Does that? Go ahead, please. Do you have the list of names? Oh, here we go. I can do it. No, we have to do a roll call.
Oh, okay.
Gail, if you're able to unmute and vote, is this yay or nay?
And if not, she can also put it in chat too.
Okay. Lisa Rogers,
Yay.
Jason Fields,
Yes.
Matt Smith,
Nay.
Mike McBride,
Yes.
Brian Kaiser,
Nay.
Elijah Dixon,
Yes.
Brandon Slater,
Yes.
and Elizabeth Comfort, no. One,
Gail has voted nay.
nay. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 nays and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's what I recorded. 5-4. Yeah. Ayes.
So we're missing just one, so, but Jim's not here.
It's a good thing, otherwise it might have been a tie.
It would have been.
It has to be greater than 50% of the total. So I don't know if that passes.
The 50% plus 1.
50%.
Yeah, it passes. So does
Well, but
staff,
Jim's not
given
here.
that change, do you guys have to write up an amendment
What I-
specific to any?
Given that amendment, what it would be, I would suggest, is that it doesn't need to change the, well, let me see, take a quicker look to make sure I'm looking at this. Because what I would suggest is that the 276,000 be added such that the personnel services are restored the same as the prior fiscal year, and then the surplus of funds would go into material services, so that we get that 276 addition, or 276,000 addition, and that 276,000 addition comes out of contingency, and so that'll be reduced in a commensurate number. So if we perhaps take a recess for 10 minutes, I'd be happy to make sure we look at the resolutions and do those, so long as there's no other changes. Alternatively, we could return for another meeting, but I think if this is the only change that's being requested, we did have another one that was a typographical error that's noted in one of the resolutions was brought to our attention, and we can address that at the same time.
Okay, what I'd recommend are continuing the discussion. When discussion is over, we'll have public comment again, and then we'll take a 10-minute recess to do any housekeeping needed for the documents
Staff will be
for approval by the Budget Committee. So I'm opening this up to post-preschool discussions, if there are any. Any questions? Go ahead.
Yes, I have a couple. These are specific to the plans at Jakewith Park. And I think I brought these up in the past budget meeting, also with staff as well. The concerns I have are when we expand the park, in essence, to 6 additional pickleball courts and then rehabilitate the tennis courts to functioning tennis courts, we're going to have a lot more activity at Jakewith Park. That is going to be felt, especially with tournaments. The pickleball group they're going to have pretty significant tournaments there. I think some of the tournaments that the tennis community used to have in this area, the Newberg Open tennis tournament, I think there was a wood racket tennis tournament. Those were very well attended back in the day when the Jakewith courts were functioning. My belief is that we need to plan for that in the next few years of capital improvement. Otherwise, we're going to end up finding that we're quickly out of parking space specifically. We have a grassy area that's unused, and we have the horseshoe pits that are largely unused. I know that I discussed with staff previously about plans to convert that into parking. As we all know, when we have the spring ball and we have softball tournaments and baseball on the other side of Jakewith Park, we have significant traffic issues and parking issues on that side of town. People are parking in the neighborhoods. And then the other side of Jakewith Park, where the tennis and the pickleball will be, just imagine having softball, baseball tournaments, and pickleball tournaments, and potentially and/or tennis tournaments at the same time. That is potential chaos. So I think we absolutely have to have a plan in the next couple years to have parking on the other side of Jakewith in the area that's basically an unused area. The other thing is the bathrooms. Obviously, the Jakewith bathrooms are structurally sound, but every day you'll hear a complaint or two about those. They're aging. When you're looking at the expansion that we have there, with the high use that we're expecting there, I think the bathrooms have to be remodeled at a minimum, but probably expanded to keep up with the service there. So I know there was, I think, a couple years ahead here, there was a Jakewith restroom R&R. I think that's probably just a rehabilitation. I don't think it's an expansion. But with what we're doing at Jakewith and what we've done the last few years, redoing the paths and improvements, I think, in the green space, Jakewith will just become more and more popular. But I just am concerned that we do these improvements and then we run into the next problem, which is, oh, now it's so popular, there's no parking. Now it's so popular, the restroom's totally overburdened. So I think that really should be a priority that we include in capital improvement going forward.
So what exactly are you asking for?
I'm just making a statement.
So from the staff side, I would say thank you. It's helpful for us to hear those things. One of the things, if it would be palatable, is if we're comfortable leaving the budget with the way that it is now, like I said before, sometime when we have new board members joining, because we'll have 3 board members that'll be here and kind of joining the group or rejoining the group in July, talking about those goals and objectives, and we can have, if that's kind of a work session, study session type atmosphere, we can talk about the capital plan that we have for the next 5 years at that time, including the possibility of expanding this Jakewith restroom, repair and replacement to a restroom and parking expansion, or leaving those alone, or however. And it would give the chance for staff to hear a little bit, and for staff to inform the board members about how this list was made on this repair and replace portion too, which might be helpful for the board now and for us to understand, does it seem like we're fulfilling the priorities of the board? And does the board understand some of the things that staff feel are priorities? Because there's a reason we have put it this way. One of the things we've tried to do is listen to those basic services staff that are out in the parks a lot and really think about what's the age and the inventory and what's it doing for those things, because there's a lot going on. But particularly for Jakewith, it's good to hear that. And, you know, activation of a park is no bad thing. It's a good thing. We just want to make sure we're ready for it, is what I'm hearing.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead, Brendan.
Probably a question for the board, and maybe Matt, you might be able to answer. So I've heard a lot from the board about a priority looking for trails for bikes, for instance, and where is that reflected in the budget currently?
I think that's been an ongoing discussion we've had in meetings and with staff, and it's still in the identification of the property and the ability to access and use property we either have or could potentially acquire. So, Clay, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, but I think it's something that's just, it's a little farther out than something that could be budgeted.
Casey can, one, tell me if I'm wrong, two, add to this if you want to. But basically, we don't have a site identified yet that seems like it would be appropriate for the needs and the requests that we've received so far, so it's not reflected in the capital budget. When that is found, it can be added to a capital project list if we think there's a solution. And again, that July work session is seeming like it might be an increasingly productive place to keep that on our radar as something else. Have we given that thought? Is there a precursor strategy we could use in terms of site feasibility studies and efforts we could do to find a site as a first step? So that might be something for that conversation too, but it is not reflected in this capital budget for the next 5 years because we don't have a place to apply a dollar figure to.
Any other questions, comments, discussion on the proposed budget presented by staff with the one amendment?
I'd just like to say that I thought they did a really nice job with
Yeah.
the budget,
Yeah.
so thank you all.
Yeah.
You guys did a heck of a job. The way it was communicated and presented was very clear, and definitely appreciate it.
And it was laid out.
Just wait till you see next year.
And I love the page, I love the page numbers, but there were a few pages skipped, but I let that slide.
We're going to try and work on that too.
As I pointed out to you earlier when I first came in here, this is something the community can read and understand. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. It's appreciated, and I would give a lot of kudos to Casey. Casey was really in early, working long, telling some new guy how things work and how they fit together, and having Julie and Brian and their teams supporting it and making contributions was really helpful, and it was a big insight for me as that new person coming into this. So thank you for everyone that's helped out, and I also want to express appreciation for the board, for your understanding and open conversation, and for all of the appointed budget members, the budget committee members. It's really appreciated. It's been suggested that we engage the budget committee when we're considering some reformatting and restructuring of the budget in the future. So that's not something that has typically occurred, but that invitation may come out as we look at ways to make this work better for both the public and the budget committee and for staff. And with staff, it's decrease the labor associated with it and increase the accuracy. So that's the things we're looking for, which has got to be good for everybody.
Thank you, Clay. Thank you, Casey. Seeing no further discussion, I'd like to go to item 9, which is public comment. I don't have any public comment slips here, but is there any comment online? Has anyone raised their hand online or submitted a request? What's the guy behind the curtain? Negative, there you go. What's his name? Richard, thank you. Okay, we are going to take a quick break. And I would say, Clay, how many minutes do we need to take a quick recess? Can we make it 12 to 13?
Let's do 15.
15 minutes. We have some housekeeping items to do to present back, so we will come back in 15 minutes.
That was pretty good.
Okay, well, welcome back. The next part of the Shaylin Park and Recreation District Annual Budget Committee meeting can now go to the last point of order, which is approval of the budget. And with this, we have three different resolutions that we're going to review and ask for a motion and a second and then an approval. The first one is to levy the taxes for the fiscal year 25-26. The second one is a resolution to approve the proposed budget in total for 25 and 26. And then also, very importantly, is the approval of the resolution to make appropriations for 25-26. And what the appropriations resolution does is it allows the Budget Committee to actually set parameters for spending. So you'll see that there's personnel services in a fund, material services in a fund, and then capital outlay. And so what this does is this really holds the staff to staying within those parameters that we've approved as a budget. So that is what the importance of the appropriations are. So, any questions on that? On any of those? Okay, so the first one is Resolution 2025-02. It's a resolution approving the levying of taxes for fiscal year 2025-26.
I'll make a motion that we approve it.
I second.
Okay. So we have moved and seconded. Resolution, be it resolved that the Budget Committee for Shaylin Park and Recreation District hereby approve the taxes provided for in the budget approved budget at the rate of 97.6 cents per thousand of assessed value for operations under government and $1,410,975 for bond debt, and that these taxes are hereby recommended and categorized for the tax year of 2025-2026 upon the assessed value of all taxable property within the district. Be it finally resolved that the president, myself, of the Budget Committee signs this resolution. And then I'll call roll for the approval. All right. Gail Bizot. Yeah, approve? Or no?
A.
A, all right. Lisa Rogers.
Yes.
Jason Fields.
Yes.
Matt Smith.
Yes.
Mike McBride.
Yes.
Brian Kaiser.
Yes.
Elijah Dixon.
Yes.
Brandon Sleiter.
Yes.
Elizabeth Comfort, myself, yes. Motion passes, and resolution approved. Okay. The second resolution is a resolution approving the budget for fiscal year. It's in entirety for 2025, 2026. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the resolution approving the budget for fiscal year 2025, 2026.
I will second it. Oh.
I'm sorry, who seconded? Brian?
Brian got the second.
Okay. All right, on the table, we have a resolution. Be it resolved that the Budget Committee for the Shaylin Park and Recreation District hereby approves the budget for the fiscal year 2025-26 in the sum of $24,567,484 at the budget meeting on April 8th, 2025, and the following resolution affirms their action. Be it resolved, the budget officer publishes the approved budget as prescribed in state statutes, and I will call a roll call for approval. Gail Bizot? Approve or not approve?
Yes.
Lisa Rogers?
Yes.
Jason Fields?
Yes.
Matt Smith?
Yes.
Mike McBride?
Yes.
Brian Kaiser?
Yes.
Elijah Dixon?
Yes.
Brendan Sleiter?
Yes.
Elizabeth Comfort, yes. Motion passes. All right. The last one is our Resolution 2025-04. It's a resolution approving appropriations for fiscal year 2025, 2026. And I would also ask in your motion that we approve in as written, so I do not need to read each one of these, for the total of $24,567,484.
So moved.
Second.
Oh. Mike.
Excellent. Moved and seconded. Okay. So be it resolved that the amounts for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2025, and for the purposes shown below are hereby appropriated as follows, as described in this resolution 2025-04, in the total amount for all funds in their appropriations for $24,567,484. I'll read the roll call for your approval. Gail Bezeau.
Yes.
Lisa Rogers.
Yes.
Jason Fields.
Yes.
Matt Smith.
Yes.
Mike McBride.
Yes.
Brian Kaiser. Yes. Elijah Dixon.
Yes.
Brandon Slider.
Yes.
Elizabeth Comfort, yes. Motion approved. Thank you. Have to find my agenda. All right, with no further discussion, I move to adjourn this Budget Committee meeting.
I would like to thank our Budget Committee members, everybody who came in here. You guys did a fabulous job. There was no fighting, no cussing.
No pulling hair.
Anyways, thank you for all your hard work. And staff, thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you, well done.
All right.
You know.
Meeting adjourned.
He owns Shea Hill.
Yes, it's nice.